While camping in the thick forests of Colorado, my daughter Emma coldly left me without any supplies and said, "Goodbye, Mom. The bears will take care of you." She thought I would get lost or hurt by wild animals so she could get all my money. But when she came back home, I was sitting there smiling. "I have a big surprise for you," I said. "You won't believe what happened next." Before we start, first let me thank you for watching Grandma Stories. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Latarsha White from Augusta, Georgia. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. The kitchen door flew open with a loud bang. Emma stomped in, her jacket wet from the Denver rain, boots making marks on my clean kitchen floor. "Mom, I need $3,000 right now." I stopped washing dishes, soap still on my hands. The mean sound in her voice made me feel scared. This wasn't my sweet daughter asking for help. This was someone being bossy with me. "Emma, what do you mean? $3,000 today?" She walked around my kitchen, hands made into tight fists. "I already gave you money last week. The $2,000 I sent you should help. With your rent." Her voice got louder with anger. "You think that's enough? You think that pays for everything I need?" My flower shop apron felt too tight around me. Dirt was still under my fingernails from working in the garden that morning. I'd built my flower shop from nothing. Worked every day after David died. Gave up everything to give her chances I never had. "Honey, we talked about this. You need to get a real job." "A job?" Emma turned around, her face red with anger. "Why should I work when you have all this money? When you control everything like a mean queen?" Her words hurt me deep inside. I stood up straight, remembering how my mother taught me to be strong. "I'm trying to teach you to work hard." "Work hard?" She laughed in a mean way. "You want to know about working hard? After you die, I'll be amazing at running your flower shop. I'll do it better than you ever did." The words hung in the air like poison smoke. My heart felt tight. The easy way she talked about me dying. Cold look in her eyes. This wasn't sadness or being upset talking. This was greed. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. 20 years of being a single mother, of giving up things, of hoping she'd become someone her father would be proud of. Everything broke in that moment. Emma must have seen the shock on my face. Her look changed, knowing she said too much. Without saying anything else, she ran toward the door. The slam echoed through the house like a gunshot. The family picture on the shelf shook. David's smiling face moving behind the glass. I stood there, not moving, watching it slowly stop shaking. The quiet hurt my ears. Outside, Emma's car engine started loudly and went away. I stayed frozen by the sink, the dish towel still in my hand, staring at that picture that wouldn't stop moving just a little. The next morning, I reached up to fix the family picture. David's face smiled back at me, young and happy, holding baby Emma at the park. The memory hit me like getting punched. David's funeral. Emma standing next to me in her only black dress, too big for her, holding my hand while I tried not to cry. The bank wanted to take my flower shop. David's hospital bills used up all our savings. I'd promised him before he died that I'd take care of Emma, give her everything he couldn't. By Thursday, I found myself looking through old photo books. Each page showed another thing I'd given up that I'd forgotten about. Emma's private school, $20,000 each year, because the regular schools weren't good enough for David's daughter. Her college at Denver University, with the dorm room she had to have. The red car. I bought her when she finished school, $15,000 in cash because she didn't want an old car. I touched a picture from her sweet 16 party. Even then, something was missing in her eyes. While other kids her age had summer jobs, Emma spent her time on her phone, living off the monthly money I gave her because I thought it would help her future. The story was clear now, spread across years of photographs. Every free gift, every time I saved her from trouble, every problem I fixed with my checkbook had taken away pieces of her good heart. I thought I was being a good mother. Instead, I'd created a stranger who thought about my death like a business deal. Saturday evening, I sat in David's old chair, the one I'd never moved. He would have seen this coming. David always understood people better than I did. He would have made her work for every dollar, made her learn to earn things. I failed him, I whispered to the empty room. The understanding settled into my bones like winter cold. I'd spent 20 years trying to buy Emma's love to make up for the father she'd lost. Every payment had been like putting a bandage over my own guilt, my own feeling of not being good enough. I told myself that giving her money was the same as being a good parent. Sunday morning I put the photo books back and sat at my desk. My hands shook a little as I picked up my pen and paper. Being strong helped me breathe better. I had to think clearly now, plan for things I'd never wanted to think about. The blank page looked back at me, waiting for choices I wasn't ready to make. Ring ring. My pen stopped moving over the legal papers I was writing when the phone made noise. Emma's name showed on the screen. I waited, then answered. Hello, sweetie. Mom, hi, how are you feeling? Her voice sounded too happy, too excited, like someone trying to sell something. I'm fine. This is weird after what we said last week. Yeah, about that. Look, I've been thinking. I was really mean and I want to fix it. The words came too fast, like she practiced them. Actually, I have an idea. Something that could fix everything between us. I waited. My time in the Military Wives Club taught me that staying quiet helps you learn things. Let's go camping together in Colorado. Rocky Mountain Park. Just you and me. Like when I was little, remember? The idea hit me like getting splashed with cold water. Emma hadn't liked outdoor stuff since high school. This is very sudden, Emma. I know. But here's the thing. My friends can't come anymore, and I have these tickets that will be wasted. Everything's already paid for. Plane tickets, camping stuff, park passes. The whole thing expires tomorrow if we don't use it. My hand held the phone tighter. The rush felt fake, made to stop me from thinking too much. When? Have you ever planned camping trips? Come on, Mom. Remember when you taught me about animal tracks? How to make a fire with wet wood? You always said the woods shows what people are really like. Her talking about our past made something hurt in my chest. Those had been good times before David's death changed everything, before I'd started fixing problems with money instead of hugs. This could be our chance to be close again, Emma continued, her voice getting softer and more real sounding. To remember what we used to have. No phones, no city stress, just mother and daughter in God's beautiful nature. I closed my eyes, fighting between hope and worry in my chest. Every smart part of my brain was screaming danger. The timing, the sudden excitement, the easy story about friends who couldn't come, it all felt planned. But underneath my worry lived a deeper pain. What if this was real? What if my daughter really wanted to fix our relationship? The plane tickets leave March 30th, Emma pushed. Denver to Colorado Springs. Then we drive up to the park. 5 days in the woods, just like the old times. 5 days, I said slowly. Mom, please. These tickets cost money, and this might be our last chance to fix what's broken between us. The quiet stretched between us. I looked down at the papers on my desk. Legal papers that could change everything. Things to protect me from possibilities I prayed would never happen. All right, I heard myself say. Let's do it. Really? That's wonderful. I'll text you the plane information. Meet me at the airport gate. This is going to be amazing, Mom. You'll see. The phone went quiet. I put the phone down carefully, my hand shaking a little. Outside, Denver's rain made patterns on the window. I looked back at the papers spread across my desk, then at the pen in my hand. Hope and getting ready. Both felt like doing something wrong. 3 days later, I folded the legal papers carefully and put them in my travel bag's secret pocket. The papers felt heavier then. They should have, full of possibilities I'd never wanted to think about. Emma waited by gate B15, jumping around like an excited teenager. Her backpack looked brand new, price tags still on the zippers. When she saw me coming, her smile got too big. Mom, perfect timing. They just called for people to get on the plane. You seem very excited. I studied her face, noticing the little twitch in her left eye. My time in the military wives support group had taught me to read nervous energy, to tell the difference between real excitement and fake acting. Why wouldn't I be? Mother-daughter adventure in the most beautiful place. She picked up her backpack with obvious trouble. When's the last time we did something like this? During the first plane ride, she talked non-stop about taking pictures in nature and breathing fresh air. Looking at her phone more than seemed normal for someone who wanted to disconnect from technology. I shared stories from my wilderness first aid training. How to read storm clouds, find plants you can eat, find your way without GPS. You really know all this stuff? Asked, writing notes on a napkin. 20 years of being prepared for anything in the military wives group teaches you to be ready. Something moved across her face. Planning hidden behind admiration. Our stop in Denver took longer than expected. Emma excused herself 4 times, saying she needed the bathroom for breaks that lasted 30 minutes each. Through the airport windows, I watched planes move against the gray afternoon sky, Colorado getting closer with each passing hour. The final flight carried us over mountain ranges that looked like broken glass against the sky. Emma pressed her face to the window, but her reflection showed worry rather than wonder. Colorado Springs hit us with cool air and the smell of pine trees. The rental car place moved fast. Honda CR-V, extra insurance, chains for mountain roads. I handled the paperwork while Emma loaded our gear, holding her right shoulder like something hurt. Outdoor store next, she announced, looking at her phone again. Need to grab few extra things. At Rocky Mountain Outfitters, she wanted specific things. Strong flashlights, emergency flares, rope, more than seemed needed for basic camping. The worker, an old man with weather-beaten hands, raised an eyebrow at what we were buying. Planning to get lost out there. Just want to be ready, Emma replied quickly. Highway 24 stretched before us like a gray line through endless forest. Mountains rose on both sides, snow-covered tops catching the last sunlight. Road signs warned about elk crossings and winter driving dangers. Beautiful country, I said, trying to break the quiet that had settled between us. Yeah, really far from everything. Emma's voice carried a strange happiness. Miles from anywhere. We stopped for gas in Woodland Park as darkness began to fall. While I filled the tank, Emma walked toward the store. Through the bright windows, I watched her pull out her phone and call someone. Her body language changed, shoulders hunched, voice low and serious. When she came back, I asked casually, everything okay? I saw you on the phone. Just checking weather for tomorrow. She wouldn't look at me. Storm coming in but should be clear by morning. The lie came too easily. I checked the weather myself. Clear skies planned for the next 3 days. As we pulled back onto the highway, that familiar worried feeling settled in my stomach. The same feeling that had kept me safe when David was sick. Something was wrong. I just couldn't figure out what. 40 miles later, the gas station phone call still bothered me. So, what did the weather people really say? Emma's hand gripped the door handle tighter. Possible light snow. Nothing big. The avoiding my question made me more suspicious, but I kept my voice normal. Good thing we packed warm clothes. Rocky Mountain National Park's entrance appeared around a curve, wooden signs announcing the park boundaries, cabins scattered among tall pine trees. The visitor center buzzed with early morning activity despite the cold season. Most tourists came in summer. March visitors were serious outdoors people or locals. Rocky Ridge Lodge looked exactly like the pictures Emma had shown me, log cabin style, rooms with names like Bear Den and Eagle's Nest. The desk worker, a young man with rough hands, did our paperwork while Emma studied trail maps on the wall. First time to Rocky Mountain Park. Yes. For her, I nodded toward Emma. I've been to Colorado before, military family trips. Which trails are you thinking about? Emma stepped forward before I could answer. Long's Peak backcountry route. We want the real wilderness experience. The worker's face showed worry. That's hard terrain, very far from help. Most people start with the easier nature trails. We're experienced campers, Emma said, though her idea of experience apparently included 0 actual camping trips in the past 10 years. Park ranger. Mike Thompson looked like he'd stepped out of a nature magazine, confident, capable, with a no-nonsense attitude of someone who dealt with every type of wilderness emergency. His briefing room smelled of coffee and pine, walls covered with detailed maps and wildlife photos. "Ladies, let's be clear about what you're doing." He spread a detailed map across the table. "Long's Peak route takes you 40 miles from the nearest ranger station. No cell phone service. Well, other campers this time of year." He pointed to red dots scattered across the map. "Recent bear activity here, here, and here. 3 cubs were seen last week, which means an angry mother bear nearby. We've had mountain lion sightings, and elk are dangerous during spring territory fights." Emma leaned forward, studying the isolated areas with intense focus. "What about emergency help? Helicopter rescue if weather allows, could be days if conditions get bad." Ranger Thompson's serious expression suggested he'd seen too many overconfident tourists become statistics. "I have to ask, what's your combined wilderness experience?" I answered honestly about my military family background, while Emma mumbled vague things about camping with friends. The ranger's doubt was visible. "Ma'am, with respect, this route isn't right for beginners. We have excellent guided tours, shorter trails." "We'll be fine," Emma interrupted. "My mother's practically a survival expert." After signing danger papers and watching safety videos about bear encounters, we rented bear-proof food containers and emergency beacons. I insisted on bear spray rental, a canister that felt familiar in my hands from military family training. "You sure about that?" Emma asked nervously. "Colorado rule number 1. Never go unarmed in bear country." Our final stop involved programming GPS locations into our emergency beacon. Ranger Thompson demonstrated how to use it with professional skill. "Push this button, hold for 5 seconds, and search and rescue gets your exact location." But remember, in that backcountry, even with coordinates, rescue could take 12 to 18 hours minimum. Loading our packs into the truck, I felt that familiar pre-danger tension. Every detail screamed warning: the far location, Emma's obvious inexperience, her strange insistence on maximum isolation. "Still sure about this route?" I asked as we pulled away from the ranger station. Emma's smile looked forced. "Absolutely. No turning back now, right, Mom?" The phrase hit my ears wrong. Less encouragement, more finality. Through the rear-view mirror, I watched the ranger station disappear behind forest. Our last connection to people fading into wilderness that suddenly felt less like adventure and more like a trap. The forest road got narrower until branches scraped our windows like skeleton fingers. My GPS showed our position, moving deeper into unmarked territory, past the last cell phone tower, beyond the final trail sign, into wilderness that had swallowed unprepared travelers before. "We're officially cut off now," I whispered, watching the signal bars disappear from my phone. Emma's laugh sounded empty. "Perfect. Just us and nature." Mile 28, Long's Peak trailhead, marked the end of drivable road. I parked beside old wooden posts that looked like grave markers in the dim afternoon light. Unloading our packs showed the weight difference. Mine spread out well from decades of military family training, Emma's bulging awkwardly with gear she'd never tested. "Jesus, this thing weighs a ton," she complained, fighting with the shoulder straps. "Proper packing takes practice." I adjusted her weight, noticing how she winced when I touched her right shoulder. "You hurt yourself." "Old injury, nothing serious." The trail wound through thick pine forest where afternoon sun barely got through. Moss-covered logs created natural obstacles and small streams required careful rock hopping. Wildlife signs appeared immediately. Massive elk tracks pressed into muddy patches. Eagle cries echoing from somewhere above the trees, and the distant howling that meant coyotes. "You hear that?" Emma stopped suddenly, face pale. The coyote pack probably 5 miles away. I kept walking, but noticed her nervousness had nothing to do with nature appreciation. For someone who'd insisted on this remote route, she seemed genuinely scared by its realities. 3 hours of hiking brought us to a clearing. Beside a mountain stream, perfect campsite with flat ground, fresh water, and clear views in all directions. Military habits kicked in as I looked at defensive positions and escape routes, while Emma sat heavily on a fallen log. "How much farther do we go?" she asked, breathing hard. "This is good for tonight. We'll push deeper tomorrow." Setting up camp showed more of Emma's inexperience. While I carefully set up our area, food stored 12 feet high, cooking area away from sleeping area, emergency supplies easy to reach, she fought with basic tent setup. "Mom, can you help with this?" She held up tangled ropes like surrender flags. Teaching her proper technique felt like old times back when she'd wanted to learn instead of just inherit. But something bothered me. Why insist on wilderness camping when you couldn't handle basic equipment? Evening campfire cast dancing shadows across our small clearing. I prepared a simple meal while Emma sat unusually quiet, staring into the flames with a look I couldn't read. The temperature dropped steadily. March nights in Colorado demanded respect. "Remember when we used to do this?" I tried conversation, hoping to find some connection. "You were maybe 10. Insisted on roasting marshmallows until they caught fire. Dad was still alive then." Her voice carried unexpected sadness. "He loved our camping trips. Said they brought out the best in people." Emma nodded, but her eyes remained distant. "Tell me about your childhood, Mom. Before the military, before the flower shop, what was it like being poor?" The question surprised me. Emma rarely showed interest in my background. I found myself sharing stories I hadn't told in years. Growing up in rural Kansas, working farms during summer, earning every dollar through sweat and hard work. "Sounds tough," she said. But her tone suggested planning rather than sympathy. "Hard work built character, taught me the value of earning what you have." Something moved across her features, anger maybe or frustration, but when she spoke, her voice remained carefully normal. "Lucky for me, right? Getting to skip all that character building." The conversation continued around the fire, Emma asking questions about my military family training, survival skills, the things that had kept me safe in dangerous situations. I shared more than usual, encouraged by what seemed like real interest. "How do you know when someone's lying to you?" she asked suddenly. "Body language, voice patterns, things that don't match in their story." I poked the fire, sending sparks flying into darkness. "Why? Just curious. You've always been good at reading people." Later, as I put out the fire for the night, peaceful quiet settled over our campsite. Stars appeared in patterns I hadn't seen since my last family camping trip, unmarked by city lights. The wilderness felt perfect, untouched, almost holy. "I'll take first watch," Emma offered. "Not really tired yet." "You sure? We've got a long day tomorrow." "Yeah, I want to enjoy this. Listen to the forest sounds." I crawled into my tent, trusting my daughter to wake me for the second shift. Through the thin walls, I could hear her moving around the fire, adding logs, settling into watch position. Normal camping sounds that should have been comforting. But as sleep came, something bothered me about her offer. In all our conversations, Emma had never shown interest in quiet thinking or nature appreciation. Why start now? The last thing I noticed before tiredness took over was the change in sounds outside. No more casual movement around the fire, just careful stillness that suggested someone waiting rather than watching. Dawn light filtering through my tent walls brought me awake. Outside, I heard the metal clanking of equipment being loaded. Too early, too urgent for normal morning preparations. I unzipped the tent flap and stepped into freezing air that made my breath visible in white puffs. Emma stood by our truck, carefully packing gear with military efficiency she'd never shown before. Every piece of survival equipment, GPS device, emergency beacon, bear spray, food containers disappeared into the vehicle. "What's going on?" My voice cut through the morning silence. Emma startled, then straightened with defiant posture. "Getting ready to leave. We plan 3 more days." "What's the rush?" "Change of plans." She avoided my eyes, continuing to load equipment. "Weather's turning bad." The lie hung between us like smoke. Yesterday's forecast had been clear and the sky showed no threatening clouds. My military family instincts, quiet since arriving in Colorado, suddenly screamed warnings. Emma, talk to me. What's really happening here? Something snapped in her expression. Years of carefully controlled anger exploded across her features like a dam bursting. You want to know what's happening? I'm done. Done with your control, your manipulation, your constant judgment. Honey, I don't understand. Don't. She wheeled around, fists clenched. Don't. Call me honey. Daughters don't get treated like employees. Daughters don't have to beg for every dollar while their mother sits on thousands. The poison in her voice hit me like physical blows. This wasn't momentary anger. This was grown hatred festering for years beneath our family's surface. I've given you everything. You've given me nothing. Emma's voice cracked with rage. You made me dependent, kept me weak, controlled every part of my life with your checkbook. Well, guess what? I'm taking control now. My hands trembled as understanding came. The camping trip. This whole thing was planned. Finally catching on, military genius. Her laugh carried no warmth. Took you long enough. Why, Emma? If you needed money, we could have worked something out. I don't want your allowance anymore, Mom. I want what's mine by right. Your business, your assets, everything you've been holding over my head for decades. The cold morning air seemed to freeze around us. I stared at this stranger wearing my daughter's face, speaking words that shattered 20 years of motherly love. You're planning to leave me here. Very good. Yes, I'm leaving you here to figure things out for yourself. Maybe 40 miles of wilderness will teach you what real dependence feels like. My chest got tight. Emma, this is bear country without equipment, without GPS. Should have thought about that before you made me into your puppet. She slammed the truck's back door shut. Maybe you'll survive. Maybe you won't. Either way, I'll inherit what should have been mine years ago. Please. The words scraped my throat raw. Whatever I did wrong, we can fix it. Don't do this. For a moment, something moved across her features. Doubt maybe. Or remembered love. Then her expression hardened into something I didn't recognize. Goodbye, Mom. She climbed into the driver's seat. Try not to meet the bears too quickly. I want you to have time to think about what you created. The engine roared to life. I stepped toward the truck, desperate to reason with her, but she threw it in reverse and backed away. Through the windshield, I saw her face, cold, calculated, empty of any daughter emotion. My shout echoed off distant mountains as the truck disappeared around a bend. The sound of the engine faded gradually, leaving me standing on an empty dirt road in the vast Colorado wilderness, 40 miles from the nearest human being. Dust settled around my feet. The silence that followed was complete. No human sounds, no machine noise, just the whisper of wind through pine trees and the distant cry of a hawk. I stood there for a long moment, processing the enormity of what had just happened. My daughter, the girl I'd raised, protected, provided for, had just sentenced me to death. The dust from Emma's truck still hung in the air when military training kicked in, overriding the emotional devastation. Shock was a luxury I couldn't afford, not 40 miles from civilization in bear country. I forced myself to breathe steadily, letting decades of family preparedness training take control. First rule of survival: check your resources. I patted down my pockets. Wallet, house keys, a small folding knife I'd forgotten about. No food, no water, no GPS, no emergency beacon, the clothes on my back and nothing else. Second rule: look at the environment. March in Colorado meant temperatures dropping below freezing at night. The terrain around me consisted of dense pine forest, unmarked trails, and complete isolation. Ranger Thompson's warnings echoed in my memory. Recent bear activity: mountain lions, unpredictable weather patterns. Third rule: prioritize survival needs: shelter, water, signaling, navigation. In that order. I studied the sun's position, figuring out direction. East led deeper into wilderness. West eventually reached the main park road, though at what distance I couldn't determine. My aging memory summoned fragments of topographical knowledge from the ranger station briefing. River systems flowed generally northwest toward the park boundary. Movement was critical. Standing still meant death. Began walking west, following the faint tire tracks Emma had left. Within 100 yards, the tracks split from what appeared to be an animal trail cutting through the underbrush. Game trails usually led to water sources, essential for survival and potential rescue visibility. Every step required conscious effort. At 58, my knees protested the uneven terrain, and my civilian conditioning was worlds away from my military family peak. But anger fueled my movement. Fury at Emma's betrayal, at my own blindness, at the years I'd wasted enabling her transformation into this monster. The forest closed around me like a living tunnel. Massive pine trees blocked most sunlight, creating a twilight atmosphere, even at midday. I broke branches as I walked, creating crude trail markers for potential rescue teams, though the odds of anyone finding me seemed impossibly remote. Bear sign appeared everywhere. Claw marks on tree bark, massive paw prints in soft earth, droppings that looked disturbingly fresh. I made noise while walking, remembering Ranger Thompson's instructions about avoiding surprise encounters. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter had placed me in a situation where bears might be the least of my problems. Hours passed. My mouth grew dry, then parched. The game trail meandered through increasingly dense vegetation, and several times I lost it completely, forced to backtrack and search for the continuation. Exhaustion crept into my legs, but stopping meant losing precious daylight. A distant sound made me freeze, mechanical, rhythmic, definitely. Human-made engines, multiple engines. I stood perfectly still, listening. The sound came from the north, maybe half a mile away. ATVs or motorcycles moving in formation. Hunters, park rangers, search and rescue. Hope surged through my chest for the first time since Emma's betrayal. I changed direction, moving toward the mechanical sounds, pushing through undergrowth that tore at my clothing. The sounds grew louder, definitely all-terrain vehicles, and they seemed to be moving slowly. Methodically. The forest began to thin, and through the trees I glimpsed a clearing ahead. The engine sounds were closer now, maybe 200 yards away. I moved faster, abandoning stealth for speed, branches whipping across my face as I pressed toward potential salvation. Breaking through the tree line, I stumbled into a clearing where 4 ATV riders had stopped for what appeared to be a lunch break. They looked up in shock as I emerged from the forest, disheveled, scratched, clearly out of place in this remote wilderness. The lead rider, a bearded man in his 40s, with a weathered look of someone who lived outdoors, immediately shut off his engine and approached me with professional concern. "Ma'am, what happened? Why are you out here alone?" My voice came out hoarse from dehydration and stress. "My daughter, she left me here, took all our equipment and drove away." The man's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "Someone abandoned you here. That's attempted murder." "I'm Margaret Harper. My daughter Emma brought me on a camping trip." Then I struggled to explain the situation without revealing the full extent of family dysfunction. "She took our truck and all our survival gear. Said she was leaving me to die." The bearded man removed his helmet, revealing intelligent eyes that seemed to be assessing my condition and story simultaneously. "I'm Oliver Reed, former park ranger here. These are my friends. We're doing a backcountry tour." The other riders gathered around, their faces showing the horror that outdoor enthusiasts felt when confronting deliberate wilderness abandonment. One of them, a woman in her 30s, handed me a water bottle that I drained gratefully. "How long ago did this happen?" Oliver asked, his tone becoming professional and urgent. "This morning, maybe 4 hours ago." Oliver exchanged glances with his companions. "We need to get you out of here immediately. Radio range is limited, but we can reach the ranger station from higher elevation." "There's something else," Oliver continued, studying his GPS device. "If your daughter took the main road out, she's looking at a 6-hour drive minimum to reach Denver. But I know a shortcut, old ranger trail that cuts through the backcountry. We can have you back to the park entrance in 90 minutes. The implication hit me like electricity. "You mean I could get back before her?" "Easily. The question is, Do you want to involve law enforcement immediately? Or do you have other plans? Something hard crystallized in my chest, replacing the desperation and fear I'd carried since dawn. Emma had calculated my death, planned my abandonment, counted on my helplessness. She'd made one critical error, underestimating the wilderness community's solidarity and my own survival instincts. I want to get back to the lodge first, I said carefully, before I decide anything about police. Oliver nodded, understanding passing between us. Climb on behind me. We'll take the ranger trail. Your daughter will never see us coming. The ATV ride through hidden forest paths revealed a side of Rocky Mountain Park I'd never imagined. A network of service trails maintained for emergency access, known only to rangers and serious backcountry guides. Oliver navigated with the confidence of someone who'd traveled these routes for years. I spent 15 years as a ranger here, he explained over the engine noise. Seen a lot of stupid decisions, but deliberate abandonment, that's criminal territory. The terrain blurred past, creek crossings, steep inclines, sections where we had to get off and guide the ATVs around fallen trees. Despite the rough conditions, we made excellent time, emerging onto paved road well ahead of Oliver's estimate. Rocky Ridge Lodge appeared in the distance, its log cabin architecture looking incredibly welcoming after my morning in the wilderness. As we approached the parking area, I scanned for our rental truck, not yet returned. Looks like your daughter's still driving back, Oliver observed. You've got time to prepare whatever reception you're planning. The other riders offered contact information, promising to serve as witnesses if legal proceedings became necessary. Oliver handed me his card inscribed with personal cell and email. Call me when you're ready to talk to authorities. What your daughter did, there need to be consequences. As they prepared to leave, Oliver paused. Ma'am, you mind me asking, what are you planning to do when she gets back? I looked toward the lodge room where our belongings waited, then at the legal documents still folded in my jacket pocket. Emma had spent years planning my destruction. Now it was my turn to plan hers. I'm going to give her exactly what she wants, I said quietly. Just not the way she expects to get it. Back in our lodge room, I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. Oliver's card lay beside me along with his offer to contact authorities immediately. But first I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The legal documents I'd prepared back in Denver felt prophetic now, folded in my jacket pocket like a loaded weapon. 3 weeks ago, I'd changed my will in a moment of maternal disappointment. Now that decision looked like divine preparation for war. I spread the papers across the small desk, reviewing the language I'd crafted with my attorney. Emma would inherit nothing. Everything would go to children's charities, women's shelters, and a scholarship fund in David's name. The irony was perfect. My daughter's attempt to murder me for inheritance would leave her with exactly nothing. But legal documents alone weren't enough. I needed evidence, witnesses, consequences that would follow Emma for the rest of her life. I dialed Oliver's number. He answered on the first ring. Margaret, you settled in. All right. I need your help with something specific. When Emma returns, I want everything documented. Her reaction, her words, everything. Planning to confront her before calling police. I'm planning to give her exactly what she thought she wanted. The chance to inherit my business, right up until the moment she realizes what she's actually done to herself. Silence stretched across the connection. Finally Oliver spoke. That's strategic. You want me there as witness. If you're willing, and maybe bring that digital camera you had on the trail. Emma's going to say things that should be preserved for a jury. Time you expecting her? I calculated Emma's route. Main Park Road to Denver Highway. Probable stops for gas and food. Her tendency to drive carefully on unfamiliar roads. Between 9 and 10 tonight, she'll be tired, overconfident, expecting to find an empty room and a grieving mother who never made it back. Instead, she finds her intended victim very much alive, very much prepared. After Oliver agreed to arrive by 8:30, I called my attorney in Denver. The conversation was brief but crucial. Tomorrow morning, the new will would be filed officially, regardless of tonight's outcome. Emma's inheritance would evaporate the moment legal documents hit the courthouse. Next, I contacted the lodge office and arranged for an adjacent room for Oliver. The desk clerk, an elderly woman who'd seen decades of Colorado drama, asked no questions about the unusual request. Evening approached with surreal calm. I showered off the wilderness grime, changed into clean clothes, and arranged the room methodically. The legal documents spread across the desk where Emma would see them immediately. Oliver's camera would have clear sight lines from the adjoining room. My phone was programmed with 911 on speed dial. Military family training had taught me that preparation eliminated variables. Tonight, Emma would walk into a controlled environment where every advantage belonged to me. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter had spent months planning my death in the wilderness. Now I was planning her social and financial death in civilization. The difference was that my plan would leave her alive to face consequences. At 8:15 Oliver knocked softly. He entered carrying professional photography equipment and the grim expression of someone who'd seen too many wilderness tragedies. Recording equipment set up in the adjacent room. Audio and video coverage of this entire space. He gestured toward the connecting door. When she arrives, you'll have everything documented. What happens legally when we turn this over to authorities? Attempted murder in the first degree. Colorado takes wilderness abandonment seriously. It's essentially death sentence with extra steps. With your testimony, my witness statement, and whatever she says tonight, she's looking at serious prison time. I nodded, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Then we wait. Outside, darkness gathered around the lodge like a closing fist. Through the window, I could see the main road, where Emma's headlights would soon appear, carrying her toward a reckoning she'd never imagined possible. The phone showed 8:47 p.m. Any minute now, my daughter would discover that her perfect crime had become her perfect downfall. Headlights swept across the parking lot, and I recognized the distinctive sound of our rental truck engine. Emma had returned from her failed murder attempt, probably rehearsing grief-stricken phone calls to report her mother's tragic disappearance. I positioned myself in the chair facing the door, legal documents clearly visible on the desk. Through the connecting wall I heard Oliver adjusting his recording equipment. Everything was ready. Emma's key scraped the lock twice before catching. When the door opened, she stepped inside with the cautious air of someone expecting to find an empty room. The overhead light illuminated her face, and I watched recognition hit her like a physical blow. "Mom," the word came out strangled, disbelieving. "Hello, sweetheart. How was your drive?" Her face cycled through confusion, shock, and something approaching terror. How are you here? How did you get back? Turns out, I'm harder to kill than you calculated." Emma's legs seemed to buckle slightly. She gripped the door frame, eyes darting around the room as if searching for escape routes. "I don't understand. I left you 40 miles. 40 miles from nowhere without food, water, or equipment." "Yes, I remember." I kept my voice conversational, almost friendly. Interesting choice of last words, by the way. "Go meet the bears." Really captured the sentiment beautifully. Wait, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You brought me to Colorado to murder me for my inheritance. Spent months planning it, researched the most remote location possible, even practiced your shock daughter routine for when the authorities found my body." Emma's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool evening air. "The problem with your plan," I continued, standing slowly, "is that you underestimated the wilderness community. Turns out there are people who actually help each other survive instead of abandoning family members to die. Look, if this is about money, it was always about money for you. That's what I finally understand. Every conversation, every camping trip, every moment of what I thought was mother-daughter bonding, you were just calculating my net worth." I walked to the desk and picked up the legal documents. "You want to know what's fascinating? 3 weeks ago, right after our fight, I changed my will. Called it maternal disappointment at the time." Emma's eyes locked onto the papers in my hands. "What do you mean changed?" mean you inherit nothing. Not the flower shop, not the bank accounts, not the house your father loved. Everything goes to charity, children's shelters, women's organizations, scholarship funds. The color drained from her face completely. You can't do that. I'm your daughter. You were my daughter. This morning you became something else entirely. A woman who calculated her mother's death for financial gain. Mom, please, if you'll just listen. I listened this morning while you explained how my controlling behavior ruined your life. I listened when you said I deserved to die alone in bear country. I'm done listening. Emma's composure cracked completely. You self-righteous witch. You created this. Your constant control, your manipulation, keeping me dependent while judging every choice I made. There it is. The real Emma Harper. You want to destroy me. Fine. But remember, you made me into this. Every dollar you dangled, every condition you attached, every way you controlled my life. This is your creation. I felt a strange calm settle over me. You're absolutely right. I did create this. I enabled your dependence, bought your affection, confused providing with parenting. That's my failure as a mother. Then change the will back. Fix this. The will was filed this afternoon. Done. I walked toward the door, past my daughter, who looked smaller, somehow diminished. But you're wrong about one thing. I didn't create your willingness to commit murder. That choice was entirely yours. Emma's voice cracked. Where are you going? To call the police. Attempted murder is still a felony, even when it fails. Wait. Paused at the threshold. Goodbye, Emma. In a strange way, you've given me exactly what I needed. Absolute clarity about who you really are. The last thing I saw before stepping outside was my daughter collapsing into the chair I'd vacated, staring at the legal documents that represented the complete destruction of everything she tried to gain through my death. The fluorescent lights in the Denver Police Department interview room buzzed overhead as Detective Maria Santos reviewed the evidence spread across the metal table. Oliver's digital recordings, my sworn statement, and Emma's own recorded confession from the lodge room created an overwhelming case. Mrs. Harper, I've been investigating wilderness crimes for 8 years. This is the most premeditated case of attempted murder I've encountered. Detective Santos clicked through the audio recordings on her laptop. Your daughter's statements are remarkably incriminating. She always was thorough when she wanted something. The district attorney will file charges this morning. Attempted murder in the first degree, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy to commit fraud regarding your inheritance. Colorado doesn't treat wilderness abandonment lightly. Through the interview room window, I could see Emma in handcuffs being processed at the booking desk. Overnight in jail had stripped away her last pretenses. No more manipulation, no more charm. Just a 28-year-old woman facing the consequences of calculated evil. Oliver sat beside me, having driven down from the mountains, to provide his witness testimony. What's the likely sentence for this kind of crime? 15 to 25 years, depending on plea negotiations. Colorado views deliberate wilderness abandonment as equivalent to attempted murder, because that's exactly what it is. I watched my daughter through the glass, feeling an unexpected absence of satisfaction. This wasn't victory. Was just the natural endpoint of choices she'd made over years of increasing entitlement and resentment. Will you be returning to Denver today? Detective Santos asked. Tomorrow. I need to visit my attorney here first, finalize some estate planning documents. The detective nodded knowingly, making sure your new will is completely secure, among other things. I stood, gathering my jacket and the evidence folders. I'm establishing a foundation in my late husband's name. Seems appropriate that Emma's inheritance should help people who actually deserve assistance. Oliver and I walked out of the police station into crisp Denver morning air. Downtown traffic moved with typical Colorado pace. Unhurried, practical, purposeful. What happens now? Oliver asked. Back to my flower shop in Denver. Back to figuring out what kind of woman I want to be in whatever years I have left. I looked up at the Rocky Mountains rising beyond the city skyline. Turns out surviving your own child's murder attempt gives you Remarkable clarity about priorities. You planning to visit her during the trial? The question caught me off guard. I considered it seriously. The maternal instinct to maintain connection warring against the reality of what Emma had attempted. No, the girl I raised died somewhere in those woods yesterday morning. What's left isn't my daughter anymore. We reached Oliver's truck in the parking lot. He handed me a business card with his personal information. If you ever want to come back to Colorado for the right reasons, camping, fishing, actually enjoying the wilderness, call me. First trips on the house. Why would you do that? Because you survived something that should have killed you, and instead of letting it make you bitter, you're using it to help other people. That's worth supporting. I shook his hand, feeling genuine gratitude for this stranger who'd become an unlikely ally. Thank you for everything. Thank the wilderness community. We look out for each other up here. As Oliver drove away, I pulled out my phone and dialed my attorney in Denver. There were foundations to establish, scholarships to fund, a lifetime of enabling to undo through positive action. Emma had brought me to Colorado to die for money. Instead, I'd learned to live for purpose. In trying to destroy me, she'd accidentally taught me the difference between providing for someone and actually caring about them. The irony was perfect and perfectly just. 3 days later, back in Denver, I received a letter from Emma in jail. 5 pages of manipulation disguised as apology, promising change if I just reconsider the inheritance, explaining how prison would ruin her life. I read it once, then fed it through my flower shop shredder. Some relationships don't survive attempted murder, no matter how much money you've invested in them. If you like this story from Grandma Stories, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts about this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the video on the left.